Hearing number 8234. Hearing number 8234 is being conducted pursuant to Section 26.100.030 of the Revised Code of the City of St. Louis. The purpose of the hearing is to determine whether to revoke the conditional use permit issued to Dollar Market LLC, CO Mohammed Khan, to occupy 3025 Chippewa as a retail sales business, adding cooking, subject to certain conditions. The conditional use permit is numbered as 125390. The hearing today has been called by this body to receive evidence concerning the conditional use permit conditions numbered 8, 10, and 12, which are as follows. Condition 8. There shall be no temporary signage on the premise or posted to the exterior or interior of the windows or doors of the establishment at any given time. Condition 10. All windows and doors must have no boards, mesh, grates, materials, or coverings of any kind. Windows and doors may have proper blinds or curtains on the inside of the windows. And condition 12. The premise will not become a nuisance property pursuant to Ordinance 68535 or successive ordinances. The Office of the Zoning Administrator has the burden to prove the conditional use permit conditions have not been complied with. After all evidence of the zoning administrator has been presented, the board will ask for additional testimony, if any, in support of the revocation. Then, the conditional use holder will be given an opportunity to present evidence. Lastly, the board will hear testimony in opposition to the revocation, if any. Today's testimony is being recorded. When you come forward, please state your name and address and be sworn in. As you testify, please direct your comments to the board and not to those in the audience. Members of the audience are asked to remain silent and not coach the witnesses. During your testimony, members of this board may have questions for you. Following the hearing, the board will proceed with its regular agenda. Upon the conclusion of the regular agenda, the board will deliberate, discuss, and vote on the hearing. The board will notify the conditional use holder of its decision by mail in about 2 weeks. The Board of Public Service has in its possession the following documents which are being introduced into evidence. Item 1, a certified copy of Section 26.100.030 of the City of St. Louis Revised. Item 2, a certified copy of Ordinance 68535 of the City of St. Louis. Item 3, the conditional use permit numbered as 125390 for Dollar Market LLC, CO Mohammed Khan, dated November 14, 2014, to occupy 3025 Chippewa as retail sales business, adding cooking, subject to certain conditions. Item 4, a letter dated June 13, 2019, from the zoning inspector to Dollar Market LLC, CO Mohammed Khan, 3025 Chippewa, issuance of a violation warning of conditions numbered 2, 5, 8, 10, and 12 of the conditional use permit based upon a site inspection, a reminder of all permit conditions, and a notice of a potential revocation hearing should the correction not be taken within 30 days date of the letter. Item 5, a memorandum dated July 16, 2019, from the zoning administrator to the board stating that upon that date, a follow-up inspection of 3025 Chippewa found violations of conditions number 8, 10, and 12 of the conditional use permit. This memo includes photographs of the noted violations. And item 6, certified letters dated August 13, 2019, sent to Dollar Market LLC, CO Mohammed Khan, 3025 Chippewa, and Heaven and Gudra Mangwa Guaya, the property owners, from the board secretary providing notice of today's hearing. At this time, the board asks representative of the Office of the Zoning Administrator please come forward and be sworn in.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but. I do. My name is Myra Turner. I'm the zoning inspector for the city of St. Louis. As of today, condition number 3 is in violation. There should be no sale of items that can be used or intended for use as drug paraphernalia as defined in Ordinance 68404 or its successor ordinance. They do have some cigars that they are selling. Number 11, all windows and doors must have no boards, mesh, grates, materials, or coverings of any kind. There is window that has the boards on it on the exterior and bar on the interior. Number 12, premises shall not become a nuisance property pursuant to Ordinance 68535. There is a new nuisance letter that was issued July 30th, 2019.
So just to be clear, the violations you noted of today's inspection are condition number 3, condition number 11, and condition number 12, correct?
Correct.
Condition number 8 and condition number 10 have been corrected.
Have been corrected. You have a copy of the permit that they came in and made application for.
Questions from the board for the zoning administrator?
Question. Do we have a copy? I have not seen it, but do we have a copy of the July 30th nuisance letter?
It's in the.
It is in the packet?
It's in the report.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions from the board?
I just wanted to clarify, you indicated condition number 11, you have it as bars or mesh covering the windows?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And if that's been noted as condition number 10 from the permit?
Well, it might have been misnoted on my end, but.
It's the bars, mesh, coverings of the windows?
Right.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Duly noted.
Okay, so again, condition number 3, 11, and 12.
It should be 10, Brother Chairman. Should be 10. Number 11 should be number 10. I'm
10.
sorry. That was a
So-
typographical error.
3, 10, and 12.
Correct.
All right. Further questions from the board? Thank you very much. The board asks a representative from the Department of Health to please come forward and be sworn in.
I do. Richard Eskew.
Please proceed.
We've done 10 inspections since January of this year. 5 of those have resulted in downgrades and then subsequent upgrades again. The current inspection that we last did on August 23rd score was a 94, and it's back to an A again.
So through your inspections, it's went up and down, but currently it's an A.
Correct.
Okay. Questions from the board? Thank you very much. So if there's anyone else present who wishes to testify the noted conditions have not been complied with, please come forward and be sworn in. Police department would like to testify. This is the place for that.
I do. Ryan Cousins, captain of District 3, in which this business is located. So I took over the district last year around April, and since then we've had a consistent problem with that location. Other than what I've previously been described to you, what we're having is a group of individuals that stand in front of that location, whether they're waiting for food or for whatever reason. They sell drugs at that location. We've had a homicide and recently another shooting where a subject was shot in the mouth. And this, as you know, is part of the continued violence in the city. And what we have been trying to do is to prevent open-air drug sales at locations such as those. However, the owner of this establishment does nothing to thwart this kind of activity. So what has been happening, it has been an unbearable burden on our resources. Every watch from our 3 watches, I've had to put officers at that location, constantly visiting it. This year, we have 84 calls for service at that location. It's very stressful on our resources. I have 15 neighborhoods in that district. And when I constantly put resources there, it prevents me from putting them elsewhere. And what we're trying to do is prevent further homicides and any other shootings from happening at that location. The subject stays there, and whenever they get into rival feuds, then of course that's a location that the other gangs come and shoot and have fights at that location. Other than these other violations, for the public safety's sake, these businesses such as this one, and what they do is they prey on that type of community. You may have people of low income there at that location. Some of them, of course, use drugs. And what they do is provide those paraphernalias for those people to come to that location. There's another store just a block up from that location in which I have received no calls for these kind of activities. So obviously, the other day we put a Skycop camera at that location, and of course, it's empty. And my feeling is that, hey, if nothing wrong was going on at that location, then why are you hiding from these cameras? So I'm asking you, at some point in time, please consider the people who live in that location, and consider that the resources and the unbearable burden that these kind of activities put on the officers for that location. It prevents us from going elsewhere to prevent further violence from happening. Thank you. Any questions?
So, Captain, just a couple quick questions here. So, I understand exactly what your point is. Have you and your officers spoken to the conditional use holder about this in the past?
Yes, sir. We have spoken to him several times. And what he has said to is that, hey, I try to call the police, but he's afraid of calling the police. But, sir, that's what you do as citizens whenever something is going wrong at your store. And we've explained this to him several times. And when you walk outside and somebody died or somebody's laying there dead in front of your store, I think if that doesn't prompt you to call the police, then I don't know what else will.
And would you put an estimate on how many times you think that you and your staff have talked with the conditional use holder about this?
I know I've spoken to him at least twice at that location. You're aware of Spire. And since the shooting up north where the workers died, Spire has had police officers working secondary for their locations where they sit and make sure that the workers are safe. And I've sat at that location in an unmarked car one day and see all the constant traffic and they hanging out, at which time I had to call some of my officers to that location. I spoke to him then. I spoke to him on two other times while just working in that location, when I went by there just to make sure that the officers are going by there. We've even just to try to, when you go to a location, you constantly have police presence. We've tried to just have the ice cream truck at that location also across the street, just to show the citizens that, hey, we're not really here just to try to, lock anybody up. So we have done that also to show the citizens that, hey, we're here pretty much for their safety. But I have spoke to him personally several times about this location.
Questions for the police from the board?
Officer, limiting to the previous 12 months, could you recite for the board the incidents occurring at that location?
So we've had a homicide there at that location where a subject apparently was shot in the head, laid out on the street about 2 feet from the door. We've had another subject shot, apparently maybe about 50 feet right nearby the alley. He was shot in the mouth and he ran up to the 3100 block of that location. In his statement, he says that my brother and I hangs out at that location all the time. Hence, they were apparently selling drugs at the time when a subject came up to them saying, hey, you owe me money, and they had a conflict regarding money, and he was shot in the face. shot in the mouth. We've had several calls for drug sales. I can't account for you the amount of time specifically right now, and so far it has been 84 calls for service at that location.
84 calls since the beginning of this calendar year.
Yes, sir.
Further questions or comments from the board? Thank you very much. If there's anyone else present who wishes to testify the noted conditions have not been complied with, please come forward and be sworn in.
I do. Officer Aaron Hine. I'm the Problem Properties Officer for the 3rd District. Yes, July 27th. First of all, thank you, and thank you for your time. July 27, 2018, the property at 3025 Chippewa was put on a public nuisance list. It was again renewed on July 30th because of the calls for service that had not declined. It actually increased. On August 23rd of last year, myself, problem property attorney, the owner with his legal came to a meeting at Central Patrol where it was discussed in depth what was required of him to keep up with the violations or the conditional use as far as what he should and should not have. Without question, he said, absolutely, I will fix, I will remedy, no problem. And hence, here we are today. He is in violation of not only once, but I believe twice. So he is renewed for another year as far as the problem property nuisance is concerned. And again, drug sales are prevalent.
So the meeting that you had at Central Patrol with the conditional use permit holder was August of 2018, correct?
Yes.
And in your opinion, you believe that you covered all the conditional uses. You believe that you explained clearly what needed to be done, and the conditional use permit holder said, I will absolutely, unequivocally correct these issues.
Absolutely. Since that time, I have an additional 5 reports that have been generated. I have an engaging violation of refuge, another engaging that I wrote, accumulation of rubbish. He has a dumpster in the back that he refuses to adhere to the city standards. Failure to abate nuisance, that was mine as well. Again, he is in violation daily.
Questions from the board for the police officer?
And the ones that you noted were your reports. Can you give us the dates on those?
Sure.
And the violation again for the record?
So the first one is going to be January 4th. This is an engaging in a nuisance. January 4th. I wrote that one. Violation of prohibited refuge disposal. That's June 25th. And these are all this year. Engaging in a nuisance. Again, that's me. That was written on, well, it's related to the dumping of the rubbish. Again, on June 25th. Accumulation of rubbish, again, on July 17th. I then followed up with another summons to that one, July 17th, the failure to abate on that one.
Would it be possible for us to have copies of those, please?
No, I cannot hand you these.
Okay.
But
Further questions from the board? Seeing none, thank you very much.
thank you.
If there's anyone else present who wishes to testify and noted conditions have not been complied with, please come forward and be sworn in.
I do. Detective Brian North Murphy. On August 21st, I was instructed by members of the Problem Properties Crew and my sergeant to conduct an undercover buy operation at this business for the purpose of purchasing prohibited items. During that time, I was able to purchase 2 single-use Black and Mild cigars with no issue. Asked for the counter, bought them, and left. A report was rendered from that operation, communication support. I don't have the complaint number, sorry, on me right now, but that's about it.
Okay. Questions from the board? Thank you very much. If there's anyone else present who wishes to testify the noted conditions have not been complied with, please come forward and be sworn in.
I do. Officer Gagik Kudian. I'm the Public Affairs Officer in the 3rd District. Thank you for your time. So the 84 incidences we've had, a bunch of them were dumping, so that's a violation of their second agreement on there. And also we've had, just to specify, we've had 2 shot spotter calls, 7 calls for help from inside the store, and 35 disturbances. That's either fights or drug deal has gone bad or something where more than one officer needs to respond to that location. So just like the captain said, it just takes a lot of our resources just for that. And 35 calls for disturbance and 7 calls for help for inside is just beyond what we get on a regular basis for anywhere within the 3rd District. That should be it for me.
And those calls are all this calendar year?
Yes, sir.
Questions from the board?
Oh, and then also on, on 4/30/2019, there was the owners, one of the employees actually, his weapon was stolen from inside of the store too, because of the placement of it when he turned his back. So it's just negligence like that allows a weapon to go back on the streets. So it's.
Questions from the board? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If there's anyone else present who wishes to testify the noted conditions have not been complied with, please come forward and be sworn in.
Yes, ma'am. Of course. My name is Dale Sweet, D-A-L-E-S-W-E-E-T, 3512 South Compton. I'm a resident of the Graveway Park neighborhood. The captain mentioned that his district covers 15 neighborhoods. I live in the neighborhood where this business is located. I also serve as the volunteer secretary for the neighborhood organization. We have submitted a letter that we'd like the board to receive. Good afternoon, Mr. President and directors, counselor, and so on. Our letter reads as follows. It's signed by Larry Atherton, our vice president, who is also here and able to take questions. We're an all-volunteer organization working for years to improve quality of life in the neighborhood. Now, in Graveway Park, we have a lot of vacant storefronts. We desperately need businesses. We need responsible businesses who sell goods that people need, things that make people healthy, provide jobs, collect tax revenue for the city, and so on. And so it is not without a certain amount of hesitation that we would submit a letter like this, or that I would show up and take time out of my day to say, shut this business down. And the reason is that this particular business operator shows no willingness to follow reasonable conditions and regulations. We have a major problem with condition number 2 related to trash disposal. I participated in an alley cleanup 6 or 7 Mondays ago. We were out in the rain with some church kids, and I had to deal with the trash around the dumpsters behind this business. There's a commercial receptacle placed in the alley, and then some residential dumpsters that serve both sides of the alley. Coke plastic things, Pepsi things, lettuce, grease, napkins, stuff that's obviously connected to this business. Large boxes from food shipments and that kind of thing. In addition, we believe that there's drug activity going on at this location, whether it's inside or outside, and that can be witnessed just driving down Chippewa Street or Minnesota Avenue and seeing the slowdown of traffic and people flagging and talking to one another and that kind of stuff, that this is not the kind of place that a neighbor is going to want to go into to buy a jar of Pine Sol or whatever she may need. Weeds grow up around the building. It's an uninviting environment for prospective customers. For these reasons and more, we urge this board to revoke the conditional use permit.
So have you personally ever had conversations with the conditional use permit holder about these problems?
Mr. President, I serve as the secretary of the neighborhood association. My job is to take minutes at meetings and that sort of thing. I have not spoken to the owner of this business.
Do you know if anyone from your group has directly spoken with them?
I do not know.
Okay. Questions from the board? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If there's anyone else present who wishes to testify the noted conditions have not been complied with, please come forward and be sworn in at this time.
Yes, I do. My name is Larry Atherton, and I live at 3530 Tennessee in the neighborhood. And I'm also the vice president of Gravois Park Association. And this store has been a problem for a long time. And now it's getting up to maybe we can get rid of it or whatever. But like Dale said, we do need store, but we need somebody that's going to come in there and do the right thing. And so far, I ain't seen the right thing down there. My neighbors keep asking me why they keep selling drugs down there. I said, they're going to get them soon. But no. But now it's come about, so we would like to see it closed down. And that's all I got to say.
So again, I'll just ask the same question I asked the previous gentleman. Have you or anyone else in the neighborhood group that you're aware of spoken to the conditional use permit holder?
To who?
The gentleman who runs the store.
Store? No.
Not that you're aware of.
No, I never have talked to them.
Questions
Matter
from
of fact, when they came in our neighborhood, they should have came to our association like most places do. And, we let them know, the rights, like what you do here, is the way it's supposed to be, your conditional use. They never came. We don't know them.
Thank you. Questions from the board? Seeing none, thank you. If there's anyone else present who wishes to testify the noted conditions have not been complied with, please come forward and be sworn in.
I do. State your name for the board. Barbara Potts, Neighborhood Stabilization Officer for the 9th and 20th Wards.
Please proceed.
Good afternoon, everybody. Well, you've heard a lot of different testimony, and I'm here to tell you that all that testimony is true and plus some. I have had the opportunity of speaking with Mohammed, not only just at the property owners meeting that Officer Hine had talked about, but a couple of other times also. I also spoke with, I guess it's one of his employees, the guy who does the cooking there. The reason why I had a chance to talk with him is because I watched him with a couple of young men take a bunch of cardboard and dump it into the city dumpster. So I got out of my car, I talked to them, I explained proper disposal, and he told me that he was told to put it in the city dumpster. And I said, well, who told you that? And he said Mohammed told him that. So I have a copy of the meeting showing that he was present at that meeting where we were at the Central Patrol. I have, help me here. I have copies of the C&Ds. I have the copy of the C&D from July 27, 2018, and the copy of the C&D, the cease and desist order, from July 30th, 2019. Every month we meet for what's called Crackdown. At this Crackdown meeting, it's the attorneys, it's the problem property officers, and it's the NISs. We go over calls for service and decide whether or not a property should be put under public nuisance, or in this case, this month, it was to decide whether or not to renew the public nuisance because there were so many calls for service. The captain talked about that they put the fly cams, the portable real-time cameras there. He didn't just do that once. He did it twice, and I was even thinking it may have actually been 3 times, but he can attest to that. But twice he had to put it there. That's ridiculous. The problems that we've had with the trash. We've had 18 CSB requests since January of 2018. 10 of them are trash related. I was shocked when we drove down the alley this morning to find that the dumpster was actually empty and locked. That's the first time. That's the first time that I've seen that. We have personally witnessed the fact that the grease dumpster was being emptied down the alley. Not only did I see it, but I happened to have been driving the alley with Sergeant Joseph Calabro, who was of EIU. EPA had to be called in for that. You could not maneuver up the alley. You would slide. That happened twice. That was the first time. The second time was after that point, when he was issued a summons. So he was informed. The Trash Task Force, the EIU detectives have been there numerous times, as was testified by Aaron Hine and Officer Kudian. These are some pictures that I've taken, and unfortunately the latest pictures are in EIU's hands, so I don't have them. But here are some pictures of just some of the accumulation that we constantly have to deal with there. When their commercial dumpster is full, they use the city dumpsters. And they fill them usually. And you can tell it is from them. There's been containers in there with their name on it. There's a lot of stuff that gets disposed. You will see a picture there of the backyard of the thing, and it has a bunch of those plastic crates thrown all over that. That was still there today. That's there right now. You can drive by and see it. It is to say that this is one of the most detrimental businesses in the 20th Ward. I do not think I would be over-exaggerating on that. Thank you.
So why, in your humble opinion, would you think someone would dump grease down the alley?
I wish I knew that answer, because honestly, I have only dealt with this one other time, and that's been very recently in the 9th Ward. The only thing, I really don't have any idea why they would do it. Sergeant Calabro had no idea, because our understanding is you get paid for that grease. Now, I may be wrong there, but that used to be the case. But they do it. They've done it. So,
questions for the NSO from the board? Thank you very much. Oh, go ahead.
When was the date of the grease in the alley?
There's a date on that picture. And the second time was about a month ago. Month and a half.
And the other set of pictures that you've submitted, what was the date of those pictures?
Yeah, there were several dates.
Okay.
But the grease in the alley, it's the 2 kids riding the bike at the top, and that grease is going down the alley at that time. There should be a date on top of that.
Okay, so the pictures are dated?
The pictures are dated. Is that me? And let's see.
I don't see the date on there.
Yeah, it's on there. That's it. The date is not. I may have taken that with my phone camera. I can look on my phone, and I'm not sure. It was probably about 3 months ago.
Further questions from the board for our NSO?
Yeah, some of the complaint numbers. The complaint number that Police Officer Hine gave you, one of them would coincide because it was given the day after that, so.
The other photo packet is from 6/24 of 2019. The photos. Further questions for our NSO from the board? Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
If there's anyone else present who wishes to testify that the noted conditions have not been complied with, please come forward and be sworn in. Seeing none, the board asks the conditional use permit holder to please come forward and be sworn in.
I'm going. Right. The board will probably have some questions, but I would do most of the speaking. But if they have questions, I'd like him to be
So
sworn.
I would prefer that if he speaks the native tongue, that he be sworn in and answer the best he can.
Right.
And you supplement him.
Oh, I agree. That's what I agree. But I'm going to make some statements first. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I do. Sure. It is Jay Kanzler, 2001, South Big Bend, St. Louis, Missouri, 63117. I'm the attorney for Mr. Kanan and Dollar Market.
State your name.
Mohammed Kanan. So I would like to ask the conditional use permit holder to give you an opportunity to respond to the violations and the items that were presented here today.
May I begin?
Can we
Mr.
let
President?
him address?
Well, there's so much to address. I don't know that in his English in a second language that it's going to work that well. He's not going to be able to do that. I mean, I've spoken in front of these boards dozens of times on behalf of my clients.
Does he intend to address the board or only answer questions?
Only answer questions. I mean, it's up to him. I know there are some questions, for example, statements about things that were made that just are not true, and he would say that is not true. But for the most part, I want to address what's been raised.
Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much. Members of the board, these are photographs that Mr. Kanan took. And I appreciate your time, and I appreciate the officer's time. I have so much respect for the police officers, and I'm sorry they brought you in to talk about cigarillos and trash when so much else is going on. This store is in a neighborhood. It is about the only thing at that corner that isn't vacant. It's about the only thing within a couple blocks that isn't vacant. There are some properties along there. It is a troubled corner. So when you're at that corner, they're not just hanging out in front of Mr. Kanan's store. They're across the way at the vacant property catty corner. They're up the street. They're riding bikes, not the kids riding the bikes, the drug dealers riding the bikes. They're all up and down there, okay? If you take this store away, okay, you are not going to stop drug deals at that corner. You're not going to stop murders in that neighborhood. It isn't going to happen. They're not even going to stop hanging out there because they're already hanging out there. They live there. They live in the apartments. They frequent the vacant buildings, the vacant homes. I am very proud to represent so many immigrants, first, second, third generation immigrants in this city. And oftentimes they operate convenience stores, gas stations, liquor stores, things that are in the city of St. Louis. Let me tell you who's not coming to this neighborhood. Sam's isn't coming to this neighborhood. QT isn't coming to this neighborhood. Whole Foods is not coming to this neighborhood. They tell you that what they want are businesses in this neighborhood. They've been telling you that for 5 and 10 years, and they're not coming. That's not Mr. Kanan's fault. It's not. They're not coming. So people in the neighborhood need things. You know, they talk about the drugs. Nobody said that anyone sells drugs out of that store because it doesn't happen. Yeah, they sell drugs on the streets. They say they brought the camera, I call it the ice cream truck. I'm a minister, and I walk North St. Louis on Friday and Saturday nights with Reverend McCoy. We walk up and down Delmar and Kings Highway and Aubert. And we used to walk up and down Aubert. And it was a open-air market of drug dealing. Now, they didn't bother us. We went, we hand out our sandwiches, we walk in violation, or in hopes that we do something to stem the violence. There's a Crown Mart just a block away, okay? It went in within a few hundred yards of that. It was open air, and there were murder after murder after murder. And you know what they did? They didn't bring the ice cream truck on the weekends. They put up one of those cameras, on the corner, and I know they cost money. And I bet if you asked Mr. Kanan, he'd pay, like many of my other clients have paid. And you know what happened? The open-air drug market on Aubert stopped. When we walk along Aubert now on Friday and Saturday nights, they're not selling drugs out there. Okay? That's because the police got involved. Had nothing to do with the businesses around there. Now, you'll notice that the signs, I think it's Myra Frazier came in and said there was a board on one of the windows. As you'll see in the photographs, that's because he took the bars off the window, and within 2 days, same night, the window was busted out and he was robbed. So he put a board back up until he could get it. See, that's what happens. Okay? So he did what he was supposed to do because I told him to. And you can see the broken glass. There's a photograph in there. Big chunk of glass. They smashed it out. How many times? Twice? Twice in the same night. So we called the police. There has been a mistake. So that is what's going on with the signs. All have permits. Those are gone. The paraphernalia, there is a mistake. He understands that he's not allowed to sell cigarillos and swishers. And when they talked about the Black and Milds, and I said, what's that? He goes, those are cigarettes. I said, no, they're not. No, they're not. He doesn't sell all of the other ones. He's mistaken in selling the Black and Milds thinking they were cigarettes. You're not just going to sell Black and Milds if you think you can sell all of the cigarillos. And, he can tell you that. You can ask him that, okay? That was a mistake, and that'll stop, okay? So the officer who made an undercover buy of Black and Milds, wasn't no undercover there. They're being sold, but he thought he could. Finally, the nuisance. It's about the trash. And listen, this is, again, a neighborhood. He doesn't own the building. Okay? He leases the bottom floor. There are people that live up above it. Okay? They use the trash cans. The neighbors use the trash cans. That yard that Ms. Potts was talking about, that's the neighbor's yard. It's not his yard. But what he has done, again, he has put a lock on the dumpster. Okay? And he's cleaned up the dumpster. And she said, this is the first time we've seen it clean. Well, that's because he's trying. Okay? And now he goes out there and he locks up the dumpster. But that doesn't stop people from throwing their garbage next to his. What they were doing before is they would throw it on top of his. Then he would throw his on top of that, and maybe it would fall down, or they would push his aside and get theirs on. And now, if he needs a second one, he'll do that. But they're locked. Okay, he's trying to do that. So we have the paraphernalia, which is the Black and Milds. We have the windows, which he's done. You'll see he took that out. Now we got to figure out, I've told him, you can get that bulletproof glass, that real thick stuff, and maybe that'll work so that he doesn't have to have the bars on it. And we'll work through that. And then the nuisance, the police officer said she wrote 6 tickets for litter. Okay, I understand nobody likes to live in a dirty city, but this isn't just him. It's that whole area. And he's doing his part. And to shut him down now for trash, you say, I represent all these stores. Every single store, the nice stores, the Crown Marts and those that are very actually well kept, brand new, $5-6 million stores. I was at my client's last Friday. On his desk, 3, 4 4 nuisance notices, okay? These go out to everybody. If they're going out to the Crown Marts, okay, who keep their places clean, who are bright lit, and they always say the same thing, a nuisance, right? A nuisance. Unruly behavior. The same thing they're saying here, people hanging out. They go out to all of them, not just to Mr. Canaan, to everyone. And they're trying. You know what? And you know what I also notice? That every one of those go out to people of color. Okay? QT doesn't get them, I bet. But the Crown Marts do, and the Dollar Marts do. They would prefer not to risk their lives in that neighborhood as well, but they put the few dollars they have into that business. And they operate it as their own, and he tries every day. I've had 5 clients murdered in stores in the last 10 years. That's why QT isn't coming. That's why Sam's isn't coming. They haven't even talked to him, the neighborhood association. But, of course, he knows there's drug deals going on, right? Because he drove by, but he doesn't know. He's never been in the store. He doesn't have to. He's got a car. He can go down to Schnucks. He can drive out to the county and visit the Sams. You know, I have the notes from that meeting that we were at a year ago. I'll tell you what we talked about. Trash. Okay? Keeping people away. Putting up some notice, a sign. There was a man who walked in with cash and bought a brown paper bag inside. I don't know what that means. So we fixed the trash. No doorman sales. There are no doorman sales. None of that paraphernalia. That's what we talked about, and he's not doing it. Signage. Get the signs off or get permits. And he did that. Windows. Has them covered. Okay? Well, he did that. He took the covers off, and he put in new windows. And then you saw what happened. Okay? There are my notes from what we talked about over a year ago.
Are you submitting that?
That's fine, yeah. And the last thing I'd like to say, and I appreciate your time, and I'm sorry. They always say, you know, call the police. Call the police. We're here to help you. And they are. But you know what that's written on? That's written on that call sheet that you talk about. That was what they had last time. So every time you call the police, they tell you call the police too much. So if you see something that's happening, they tell you to call the police, and then they tell you you've called them too often. It's an absolute catch-22. It's a no-win situation. Work with this man. It's his livelihood. He'll do. If the police officers want to work with him, the neighborhood association wants to work with him, I'll work with him. I went to that meeting. That's the only meeting I've ever been asked to. And I went there. I'll go to a meeting once a week with y'all. But if you want him out, you can certainly find a way to do it. You can just keep writing trash tickets until the cows come home, and then come up here and tell them, close it down. Thank you. I am sorry, yeah. The oil, okay. That's a great question. Why would somebody dump the oil? You get paid for that stuff, okay? People steal it, in fact. All right? The truck company, the company hauling it away spilled it. And we have a trial on that next week or the following week, okay? Because I've asked for the police report. And he said, you charged him with it, but it was the company driving away with the oil that spilled it. Show me the police report, and they've never been able to, so we just set it for trial. So that's what's happened there. These guys weren't out there dumping oil in the lot. It had nothing to do with them. It had to do with the oil removal company. Is that it?
So a couple questions.
Certainly.
So in the pictures that you submitted, and I just want to be clear, on one of the pictures, there is actually a picture of grates that are still on one, bars still on one of the windows. Are those bars still there, or were those removed?
Just one window, the one is broken. Temporarily took the new glass, and it's gonna be taken off.
He put it back on because they broke into the glass.
Yeah, I don't got
so
no
he had
window.
To put it, no window, so we had to put something back on, or people would come and go. So it was taken off. They broke in.
To the company, come fix it. I called company already, but they come same day.
So when they broke in, the bars were not on the window,
Sure.
and you put them back as a way to protect your business.
Yeah, and the officer he make the report. He's here.
Until someone can come and fix the window. It's just
Yeah, that's how we break in because I don't got no bars.
And is the window fixed today?
No, sir.
So
I'm still
why
waiting.
would it take so long to fix a window? They can do
Days
that
ago,
in
sir.
an hour.
It just 2 days ago. It just 2 days ago happened, and I call him and he say gonna come next week. His company doesn't come same day to fix it for me.
Labor Day
I told him emergency. I got my stores open, please, and he say I need 2 days to come.
So
2 3 days.
when was the window broken? When?
2 days ago.
Okay. And then when did you install the grate?
I'm sorry, sir.
When did you install the grate back over the broken window?
Maybe tomorrow or after tomorrow it'll be fixed.
No. When did you put the grate on? After the window was broken 2 days ago. When did you put the grate back?
In the night when nobody show up, I keep it open all day, and I put it by 10 o'clock in the night. When I want to go home, I can't keep the window open.
Okay. And then when did the window company say they would come out and replace it?
Maybe tomorrow or after tomorrow. I don't want to be lying. I'm not sure.
Maybe tomorrow.
Yes.
And what is the name of the window company you're employing?
He's not a company. I got his name and his information. I don't know his name company.
Okay. All right.
Got
The
his
next
name and his
question-
phone number if you like.
Okay. The next question that I have is, you alluded in the end to the fact that the grease was being transported away and it was leaking out of a truck. And so the NSO had mentioned that happened at least twice and DNR was involved. And so my question would be is, you guys sound like you're in a court trial on that. What would the waste hauler's name be that was hauling it away?
I'm sorry, but the name
What
of
was
the
the
company?
name of the company that was hauling the grease away?
Honestly, I can't remember, but I can get it in a dumpster.
Okay. Is it somebody who's licensed in the state of
There
Missouri?
is
to
a
do
big
that?
company, yes, sir, and they send me check every month for the oil. And just one time happened, not twice, but I know. It's hooked up, when hooked up the both side to the dumpster, he hooked up one side and left one side. When he put it up, the whole dumpster coming in the alley. And when I know, I send the 3 people, I pay him like $100, and I put like all the flour I have in my store with the hot water and soap, and I clean it in the same night.
And how often do they come and remove the grease?
I remove it, sir. They jump it, and it's not my fault, but I clean it.
How often
How
does the
often
company
do they come to pick the grease up?
I guess one time a month. I'm not that busy, a small store. One time a month.
Okay. As a condition, and just to go over this, just to be very clear with you, conditional use permits are in place so that you can have a business in a district that is not zoned for that, and you are supposed to fall into compliance with all the conditions so that your neighbors never notice that you're there. Okay?
Okay.
And so today we had a number of people, the police, we had an NSO, we had neighborhood organizations, people coming up here, all testifying about all these different things that you haven't been doing. And so, in my mind, the question is, you have to understand what the conditions are. You have to be able to respond to those as a conditional use permit holder. You should not need an attorney to stand by you and interpret every condition and nitpick every piece of that so that you understand it. You can also reach out to the building division, the zoning administrator's office, and you can ask at any time if you have a question, and that costs nothing. Okay?
Thank you.
The other thing that probably caught my attention a little bit was when I heard that there were 84 calls in this calendar year. And I do understand that it is a street corner, and I do understand that there are other issues, but that seems relatively exorbitant to me. My question is, as a conditional use permit holder, what have you done to prevent that from happening? Now, I heard your attorney say that you call the police and you get marked down on a list, which is fine, you do. But at the end of the day, when have you, or how many times have you reached out to the police and asked them to give you advice or help you? Or what measures have you taken to try to mitigate this problem? What have you done?
Yeah, I asked him to can help me with the security. And they say you're going to go to the city hall to do application. I asked the officer if I can bring security, or if every officer come to the store. I asked him if he can give me like part-time, 5 hours, 6 hours, help. I hire somebody to secure it. But this is a problem it was have before. Not right now. It's long time ago, sir. This couple of months, this past 4 to 5 months, I don't have no hangout in the front of the store. I don't have that problem like before.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
A couple of things. When you are at a corner in intersection and people call in something, they call in a reference. So they can be half a block down and they'll say, I'm by the Dollar Mart. It'll be,
Chipman, Minnesota.
yeah, it'll be noted as the Dollar Mart on the thing. So anything being called on any of the corners within the area, in my experience with these, they will just say, where are you calling from? I'm by the Dollar Mart, and that's where they will come. So it doesn't necessarily mean that what was happening was the Dollar Mart. It's also, there are some couples above had more than their fair share of folks, the police officers being called for.
So on your notes.
And there is, by the way, outside and inside surveillance.
Okay. On your notes, and I don't have those in front of me, they're somewhere here on the table. I need to gather those back. It says, it talks about, the people loitering, and it notes security. Have you hired any security to help with that?
Yes, sir. I hire, but
You
not an
have-
officer. And after this, I don't need it because I don't got no hangout in the front of the store.
So you've hired a licensed uniformed security
No.
officer
No.
to
What?
patrol?
No, it's a guy from
Well,
the
what
area.
does security mean then? What do you define as security?
I'm sorry, sir.
Okay. What do you define as hiring security?
I'm looking out for officer. A police.
Okay. Questions from the board for our conditional use permit holder?
Just kind of that was a segue to one of my questions. I have a couple questions here. Have you in fact employed off-duty police officers or even security guards, whether armed or unarmed, in the past, and let's say within the last 3 years? Have you paid any individuals to work security at your store?
I don't understand.
I think if you answer the question, the answer is to licensed security officials.
Anybody.
No.
Okay.
I think what he's saying is they will hire somebody to kind of work the store, pick up, keep people moving. They are not uniformed folks. They're employees.
Exactly.
Okay, so for somebody that would be coming to that business, they would not see anyone that even looks or remotely looks like law enforcement. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And that's going to lead to another question about that in a minute. What are your store hours?
8 to 9:30.
8 to 9:30? Okay. Do you have any security cameras inside and outside your store which would point directly to the outside, which sounds like the police officers here have been there outside seeing
Yes, sir.
heinous activity?
Yes, sir.
And at least one homicide, correct? Okay. Now, Mr. Kanzler, I agree with you totally about businesses in the city and the need for them, and I don't think we can have enough of them, good, viable businesses. You have a lot of people here that are in favor of a revocation, and our task is simply with the conditional uses, to my knowledge. I know we have societal problems we'd all like to cure today and yesterday. But given that, why do you think no one is, you mentioned businesses, and it's an important business in the neighborhood in the 3rd District. what would be your explanation why there's not a single individual here to support this business?
Well, first, I did not know that there would be groundswell. We don't get just told to show up, and often it's just the person. So we could have done that. The other issue is that the people that typically live in and around those areas are either working, sometimes they don't have transportation. More important to do in their mind, they have obligations to meet and can't take the day off and come down.
As do these individuals.
Well, tired. So, but that being the case, I get that. And if you wanted to continue the hearing, again, and I'm not suggesting, could we come in with people from around the area who say, yes, I buy my milk there. Yes, I buy my other things there. Yes, I come down there and buy something to eat. Absolutely. Otherwise, he wouldn't be in business. You would go out of business. So there is a need for these stores. In New York, they call them bodegas and others. Now, I'll be the first to admit that many stores have broken the trust that they should have with the city. I've had Mr. Kanan come to my office a half dozen times in the last 2 months, and we talked about it. He said, what do I need to do? I said, you need to get these signs. He sends me photographs. I said, what about that one? Take that one off. What about that one? Go down and get a permit. What about this? I said, why don't you build an enclosure around it? Get a lock for it. Take the bars off the windows. They said take the bars off the window, take them off. Well, it took about 6 hours till they broke into a store. This is someone who wants to work with the who's willing to put in the time and the money. This costs him money too. I mean, all he has, the only thing he has in life is in this store. And when he puts more into it, it's because he wants to stay there. And if he stays there, maybe he makes some money. So it's not a matter of one of the folks that are breaking the trust, want to grab a few dollars and walk out and say, yeah, I'll move on to the next.
Thank you. How long has the business been how long have you been in business?
2 years. This is my third year.
So this is the third year? Okay.
Yes, sir.
And I'm about ready to wrap up here. So you mentioned, I commend you on your ministry work, and you mentioned Albert. Albert's afar. I'm pretty knowledgeable about the city streets, geographically where people live, and Albert's a long way from Chippewa. Have you yourself ever walked, handed out sandwiches at night, and seen the drug transactions that have been reported here today at this business yourself?
So the ministry that I work with, nightlife, that's where we are there in North St. Louis. I haven't been down in this area. I've been to the store many times. I stopped by the store when I'm there. I've gone with the city officials. And the last time we had a meeting, I met there and we look at it. And again, things are going on there. I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, you don't have to be law enforcement to understand what's going on in the neighborhood, and it's sad. But it's not because his store is there.
Gotcha. And my last comment is more commentary. I think anytime I myself walk up to a business or any entity and I see some law enforcement presence, even though I don't ever have any intention of doing anything illegal, unethical, or unsafe, it certainly gets my attention. And I know there's somebody there to protect the store and to protect the folks that live around it. So I trust you'd be willing, I don't know how this will go, I trust you'd be willing to employ somebody immediately during business hours to protect the store and the community. And I guess that is a question, and maybe, I think, a fair question.
And I absolutely think it's a fair question, and it's a condition that's been imposed by city or agencies and boards in the past. You run how much? I'm in negotiations with the city. They say, we want a licensed, it's in the Wells Goodfellow name. We want a licensed, or we want a uniformed police officer. Okay? Unfortunately, one won't work. So when you get one, you got to have two. And it's $75 an hour per officer, so that's $150 an hour for the security, which makes, that's very expensive for a small business. But in this case, if it were maybe a licensed security guard, something along those lines, during periods of time, I don't know that first thing in the morning is necessarily, but there are periods where the activity is greater and you could work out that schedule. And I believe Mr. Kanan would be open discussing that with anybody.
I would say 84 incidents since January 1st would rise to the level of significance to warrant that.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm saying he would be willing to find some way of doing that.
That is good to hear. That's all the questions I have at this time. Thank you.
Further questions from the board for our conditional use permit holder?
If I could just clarify, for the attorney, the picture package that you submitted, the date of the pictures?
Mohammed, when did you take those? No, the pictures?
When I received the estimate, the paper from the city hall, I take pictures, and I take some picture today morning. It's not in one day.
Within 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Because the last notice came, I think, August 14th.
Every day I take more pictures.
And you indicated that you corrected him on the sale of the Black and Milds. When was that?
I heard, the first thing I heard about it was today.
And you indicated that the sign permits have been obtained. Do you know when that was?
When got permits?
Yes, I give it to you, the permit.
Okay. I don't, in the past, month, and probably in the past 2 weeks. And
then as to the issue of the nuisances that are being cited, the conditional use permit references ordinance 68535. Have you reviewed that with Mohammed?
I have not pulled out the ordinance and reviewed that. I have talked to him generally about the things that are required to avoid a nuisance: trash, loitering, bad conduct, things along that. I'll be happy to pull it out. Unfortunately, reading it to him, written the way it's written, is not going to mean a lot to him. It takes some interpretation.
Would it ever mean anything to him?
Oh, no, it means something to him. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that. If I were just to read it to him, some of the words he would not know. But he understands the concepts that if I explain them to him. And that's what I have done before.
That's all I have.
Further questions or comments from the board for our conditional use permit holder?
I do have one more question. I've had a few jobs in city government, and one of them, prior to my current position, we dealt with property owners often. And when a tenant would be cited, we'd have those discussions one-on-one. I had many personal phone calls with those individuals, or work calls, I should say. And I always wanted to talk to the owner because a lot of times it wasn't the tenant's fault. I noticed there's an owner that is not present. Has that? Pardon me? Okay. Do you feel he has a concern, invested interest in the city of St. Louis? Or because I'm a little puzzled why that individual wouldn't be here today?
It was addressed. I know when it comes to the trash and the people and the other tenants and the yard, those things aren't being addressed.
Okay.
They're being addressed by the tenant the best he can and locking his own dumpster and doing the things that he can do. And I've also explained to Mr. Kanan that, as I've explained to every one of my clients, that, yeah, you are not technically responsible for the streets and the sidewalks and, down the block away. But, yeah, you are, because it's your business. It only helps.
Right. Unless that owner, unless their home address is registered as that business, in fairness to Mr. Kanan, he would not be responsible for those violations. It would be the owner. So
right.
That's correct. So I was just curious why the owner is not present. But
I don't know.
Okay. Thank you.
He said he couldn't come.
Further questions for our conditional use permit holder? So, counsel, in closing, I just want to make the point that you had mentioned earlier that you represent a number of conditional use permit holders, and we have seen you at many hearings. And any time that we do a public hearing for conditional uses, you can always invite people to come and testify however they feel they need to do that. So I want to make sure that you're very clear that that is always the case in the rationale behind a public hearing.
Understood. And I know, and I've never felt like I could. I just didn't know today. Usually we're not joined by so many people. Okay. I did not understand the issues that they want. And so that was my point, that I did not ask him to gather up folks.
Okay. If there's no further questions from the board, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
At this time, I'd like to ask Alderwoman Kara Spencer from Ward 20 to please testify.
Thank you, Mr.
Let us
President.
swear you in quickly, please.
I do, thank you.
Would you state your name for the board?
My name is Kara Spencer, and I'm the alderman of the 20th Ward. I represent the area where this store is located. I want to first apologize for my tardiness. I was in a lunch meeting that went woefully over. And the reason I'm here, the reason why we're all here, I think this is unusual. As the gentleman pointed out, he didn't expect to see this type of response to a conditional use hearing. That's because what we are looking at is something very unusual. We've talked a lot about the signs. I've heard some other issues, the garbage. That is not the crux of what we're dealing with here. We are dealing with a place of business that is quite literally terrorizing the surrounding community. I get calls on a very regular weekly basis from neighbors that are held hostage by the illegal activity that continues to take place at this location. The surrounding community is terrorized by continual shooting, drug transactions, and other illegal activity that not only takes place at this location, but leaves and goes down the alleys and continues to wreak havoc in the community. We have a lot of convenience stores and a lot of quick marts in our community. All along Chippewa, there are several. None of them are as big a problem as this one, by far. I do not receive more calls about any location in the city than I receive about this one. Last week, we had a state of the city address with the mayor and the entire board of aldermen and the chief of police and the director of public safety, who serves on this board. He came before us and he said, one of the important things we're going to work on as a city is closing down these stores that are the stores that are wreaking havoc in the community. Not all convenience stores, not all quick marts, but those that are continuously not playing by the rules and allowing activity to take place on their premises that is disastrous for the surrounding community, and this is one of them. It is not often that our captain and the entire members of the nuisance committee, the nuisance team here with Officer Hine, Barb Potts, et cetera, would come and spend several hours of their day here before you all in support of closing down a business. The amount of manpower hours that our police departments spend at this location is astronomical, not just here, but in the surrounding blocks because of the activity that originates here. I'm not saying this lightly. I'm saying this with fear in my voice because I'm fearful of the activity that takes place there and retribution that may take place afterwards. But it is that important to me that we eliminate the massive amount of problems that are starting right here at this location.
So I'd just like to ask you a question. Have you had the opportunity to ever speak with the conditional use permit holder?
No, I have
these
not.
Problems? Okay.
I've spoken with the rest of the team. I don't normally get involved on the one-on-one basis in that level. I have the utmost trust in our nuisance officer and our neighborhood stabilization team that works on these issues.
Okay. Questions from the board for our alderman? Seeing none.
This is some really scary stuff. I'm not talking about sign permits. I mean, what goes on at your store, sir, is really scary. I won't drive by there at night. Many of the neighbors avoid going by there, and they can't help it because they live on the block.
Okay, I would ask you guys please not to debate this here.
I agree.
We're doing
apologize.
testimony for the board.
This was my fault, and I take ownership for that.
Further questions for our alderman?
Thank you for letting me testify today.
Thank you for coming today. If there's anyone else present opposing this revocation that wishes to testify, please come forward and be sworn in. Seeing none, I'd like to enter a series of items of evidence today for the hearing. Item A will be the zoning inspector's report. Item B will be photographs from the zoning inspector. Item C will be a letter from the Gravois Park Neighborhood Association. Item D will be a report, meeting, and log from the St. Louis Police Department. Excuse me, that's from the NSO. Item D will be a list of items or an agenda or notes, if you will, from a meeting with the police department and a conditional use permit holder submitted by the attorney for the conditional use permit holder. And item E will be photographs provided from our conditional use permit holder. Counsel, am I missing any evidence? Hearing number 8234 is now closed and submitted to the board. We will now proceed with our regular agenda. Can you call the roll, please?
Director Scobie.
Here.
Director Wilson.
Here.
Director Hayes.
Here.
Director Augustin.
Here.
Director Eccles.
Here.
Director Edwards is excused, and President Bradley.
Here, we have a quorum. I'll call this meeting in order.
From the President, Fire Protection System Service Inspection, Testing, Maintenance, Repair, and Certifications Contract. Recommends approval. Planning and Urban Design Agency designates the Oscar Warring House a city landmark at 1211 Tower Grove Avenue. Recommends approval. And the Planning and Urban Design Agency designates Galilee Missionary Baptist Church a city landmark at 4300 Delmar. From the President, Director of Public Utilities and Streets. Joint recommendation that permit for Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District for street improvements to consist of point repairs. Where's the fence? Okay. Point repairs to 7 wires for sewer laterals and retaining walls necessary to adjust 3 manholes to grade at 5750 through 5972 to Giverville Rear Alley in City Block 5522, 5523, 5518, 5511, and 5512. And also from the President, we have 12 festival zones. Clean Zone, St. Louis Cardinals Clean Zone, Eleanor K. Sullivan on the east, 18th on the west, Washington on the north, and Shoto on the south for the U.S. men's soccer game on September 10, 2019. Clean Zone would be from September 6th through 10th, 2019, and will prohibit signage, merchandising, and ancillary events. And that's September 6th through the 10th, 2019. Grand Center, First Friday food trucks at Washington between Grand and Teresa. Curb lane only for food trucks, no street closure, September 6th, October 4th, and November 1st. December 6, 2019. Mexican Independence Day Festival at Cherokee between Iowa and Nebraska on September 14, 2019. Wash U Employee Appreciation Day at 700 South Euclid between McKinley and Clayton and Euclid Meters, Hudlin Park on September 20th, 2019. Run for the Hills at Itasca and Donovan and Francis Park on September 21st, 2019. Oktoberfest St. Louis at Washington between Compton and North Teresa, Lenoir between Samuel Shepherd and Locust, Josephine Baker between Samuel Shepherd and Washington on September 27 through the 29th, 2019. Hicker Toss-Off at the 6400 block of Wise, September 28, 2019. NLEC September Giveaway at Locust between 14th and 15th on September 28, 2019. Rolling on the River for Backstoppers at Lenore K. Sullivan between Popular and Locust. Motorcycle Ride September 28th and Cyclist Ride September 29th, 2019 through the City of St. Louis and Steinberg Rink Parking Lot September 28th and 29th, 2019. Sumner High School homecoming at the Tuskegee Airfield at Tandy Park and Cottage between Annie Malone and Billups on October 19, 2019. We also have an addendum for Great Forest Park Balloon Race and Glow at Central Field and Forest Park and World's Fair Pavilion on September 20th and 21st. It's an addendum to permit number 126771 issued July 23rd, 2019. Cafe Natasha Gin Festival at Wyoming between Grand and Alley on September 10th, 2019. From the Director of Public Utilities, recommendation that Dan Solchnik to encroach with a sport court to include a ground basketball hoop 3 feet deep with rock and concrete pad at 10 Gil Mary to measure 9 feet by 40 feet, 44 by 6. Recommends approval subject to certain conditions. From the Director of Public Utilities and Streets, joint recommendation that the following permits be approved subject to certain conditions. Union Electric Company doing business as Amarin, Missouri to replace 2 poles and install underground primary cable across the alley at 1001 Russell. Union Electric Company doing business as Amarin, Missouri to install 17 feet of conduit run from manhole at corner of South Kings Highway and Bischoff North and install 42 feet of conduit run from manhole at corner of South Kings Highway and Botanical South. MCI Metro Access stored at existing handhold, placed on permit 123981, located in front of 2910 Dalton, bore and place conduit for new fiber 36 feet west across the street. Then turn and bore 55 feet north along the west side of Dalton, ending and placing a new handhold at the side of 5800 Southwest. MCI Metro Access stored at existing handhold located at the intersection of Southwest and Sulphur near 6031 Southwest. Bore and place conduit for new fiber 125 feet southeast north along the west side of Sulphur, then bore east across Sulphur, ending and placing new handhold at the side of 5997 Southwest Avenue. MCI Metro Access beginning at the northwest intersection of Laclede and North Taylor across the street from 4502 Laclede. Place new handhold, then bore and place conduit for new fiber 272 feet south along the west side of North Taylor, placing handhold in the rear of 4511 Forest Park Avenue. Then bore 1,098 feet across North Taylor and along the south side of Alley, ending and placing new handhold at the rear of 4407 Forest Park. MCI Metro Access beginning at the existing handhold in front of 4503 McPherson, bore and place conduit for new fiber 56 feet east along North Taylor and turn and bore 505 feet south along the east side of North Taylor, ending and placing new handhold across the street from 4502 Persian. Charter Communications install underground coax cable to a customer at 951 Skinker Parkway. Charter will cut a 2 feet by 2 feet by 2 feet pothole on the north side of Maple across the street from 951 Skinker. Bore south 50 feet across Maple to 951 Skinker, crossing Maple, placing vault at 951 Skinker Parkway. Charter Communications to cut a 2 by 2 pothole at the base of the pole in front of Riverview. First pole next to their driveway. Bore in northbound direction 36 feet under Howell Street. Turn in eastbound direction, boring 86 feet in the right-of-way, stopping behind 9078 Howell. AT&T contracted to bore and place a 2-inch conduit and fiber optic cable from the front of 6635 Clayton to the side of 6650 Berthold for a distance of 308 feet from the inside of the 6650 Berthold and manhole 6650. Directional bore and place fiber cable. Level 3 communications starting from the existing Level 3 to 6 Cardinal Way Street building, starting at existing manhole located north of 215 South 8th Street, St. Louis, Missouri, 63102, and west on the intersection between Walnut. Route East proposed for FOC through existing Level 3 conduit, then intercept said conduit with proposed traffic rated manhole, etc. From the Director of Streets. Ordinances to conditionally vacate as follows. Northern 120 feet of the 15-foot wide north-south alley in City Block 1880 is bounded by Cole Brilliant, Grand, Aldine, and Spring. An irregular portion of Amanda Street abutting City Block 1693. Recommendation that permit for Mexico LLC, doing business as Gringo, to encroach with Sidewalk Cafe, 5 tables, 20 chairs with liquor utilizing 185 square feet at 635 Washington. Recommends approval subject to certain conditions. From the Director of Public Utilities and Parks. AT&T Wireless to allow placement in Forest Park east of Muni parking lot and Summit Drive of a mobile wireless communication tower, cell on wheels, COW, for overflow cellular communication messages for patrons, attendees, vendors, and emergency services and first responder personnel during the following special event in Forest Park, the Great Forest Park Balloon Glow and Race from August 1st, 2019 to September 30th, 2019, etc. Recommends approval. From the Director of Public Utilities and Public Safety. Joint recommendation that the following permits be approved subject to certain conditions. Bridge Delmore LLC to consolidate land at 5126 through 32, 5136, 5140, and 5144 through 48 Delmore, City Block 5051. STL Riverview Plaza to subdivide land at 8907 through 51 Riverview in City Block 9115. Recommends approval. UCBC Property LLC to subdivide land at 4401 through 65 Manchester in City Block 5108. First and Last Home LLC to subdivide land at 2720 through 26 Marcus in City Block 3713. Henshaw and Culbertson LLC for a boundary adjustment at 26 Portland Place in City Block 4909. Joseph Adewuni and Mike and Lisa LaRose Sharan doing business as LLC for a boundary adjustment in the 2300 through 2306, 2308 through 2324 LaSalle, and 1111 Missouri in City Block 2263. Recommends approval. Recommendation that permit for Lois M. Taylor to subdivide land at 4501 through 4503 Mary in City Block 3546 be denied by reason of the fact that it is a violation of Board Order 720. From the Director of Parks, Recreation, and Forestry, recommendation that permit for Gateway Fireworks to hold a firework display September 12, 2019 in Forest Park. Recommends approval subject to certain conditions. From the Director of Public Safety, we have the conditional use.
Good afternoon, Mr. President and members of the board. My name is Sandra Long, zoning specialist for the city, and I'll be representing the building commissioner at today's meeting. Per board order number 766, transmitted herewith are recommendations for the following conditional use agenda applications. Approval with conditions is recommended for 8 applications. 3505 Clay, 3753 Itasca, 1226 Sells, 5103 Page, 6244 Clayton, 5143 Daggett, 392 North Euclid, 6032 Del Mar. I request that these recommendations be approved as submitted.
Are there any questions on the conditional uses from the board?
Motion to approve the conditional uses.
Moved and second for approval of today's conditional uses. Can you call the roll, please?
Director Scobie.
Aye.
Director Wilson.
Aye.
Director Hayes.
Aye.
Director Augustin.
Aye.
Director Eccles.
Aye.
Director Edwards is excused, and President Bradley.
Aye. Conditional uses are approved. Hearing number 8234, Dollar Market LLC, to occupy 3025 Chippewa as a retail sales business, adding cooking, subject to certain conditions. Today we heard from our zoning inspector that conditions 3, 10, and 12 are still in violation. Those are: condition 3 is the sale of items that can be used for drug paraphernalia. Item 10 is windows, doors. It should not have boards or grates or coverings of any kind unless they are proper and on the inside. And condition number 12, which is a nuisance property pursuant to ordinance 68535. From our health department that numerous inspections have been completed, and although the inspections have varied up and down, we currently have a reasonable rating for health. We heard from numerous officers of the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department, and those officers all testified, provided information that this was a nuisance property. They have had 84 calls since the beginning of the calendar year. They've had numerous other issues in front of the store, and I want to make the point that they said not only in front of the store, but in the store as well. We heard from the Gravois Park Neighborhood Association, who stated that everyone would love to have more businesses in their neighborhood, as they have many vacant storefronts. However, in this case here, they absolutely feel that this business needs to have its conditional use revoked. We heard from our neighborhood stabilization officer, who provided testimony and photographs concerning the nuisance issues with trash, and talked about the issue with the oil and grease in the alley and so forth. We heard from our conditional use permit holder, who excuse me, was accompanied by his attorney, and his attorney took the lead to explain to us their point of view concerning many of these accusations or charges that are being brought against them. The alderwoman from the 20th Ward also testified that she would like to see, and she was very adamant that she would like to see, this business done away with and revoked, as there are many issues that have come to her attention through multiple phone calls of constituents and also through her eyewitness accounts. And so with that, I'd like to open the floor up for conversation from the board concerning this, as to what comments you folks may have about the testimony and thoughts on revocation.
Yeah, it's this is different than a lot of these conditional use permits hearings that we have. Usually it's signage or simple things to fix, and he very well may fix them. But there's a serious issue with the clients that he has going on, visiting the store and hanging out there, and doesn't seem like has done much, if anything, except for the last 2 weeks, even though this has gone on for 2 years and, has been brought to his attention. I look at the health inspecting, that's not necessarily part of this permit, but, how many times do you need to be told, here's the standards and you need to comply with it? And it seems like, half the time he gets cited for stuff and then he fixes it, but then it drops back down. And with the amount of testimony of people involved saying this needs to be shut down, it seems to me that it is, that got my attention.
Other comments from the board?
I think overall there's a concern that their ability to actually comply with the rules and regulations, for the health department to have to inspect an agency 10 times within a 9-month period, that's pretty excessive. So an individual organization has to be deemed to be high risk in order for them to have that number of inspections. So there's a lot of concerns here.
Thank you. Further questions or comments?
Would someone have called the health department for them to go out there? Because it didn't sound like there were substantial findings. It just dropped in grade.
Yes, so for it to drop in a grade means that there's a finding that wasn't corrected on site.
Okay.
So just a few inconsistencies I want to point out for the board to consider. Most of you have been here for quite a bit of time, but the attorney for the conditional use permit holder began his testimony by telling us that he represents many individuals in a conditional use setting and hearing, if you will. Later in his testimony, when he was asked by the director of parks why there are not anyone here testifying in behalf of the conditional use permit holder, he stated that he wasn't aware that people could come for that purpose. So I found an inconsistency in that testimony there. I also found that when I asked the conditional use permit holder to give me details about things that he was supposedly doing, like fixing the window or who the waste hauler was that spilled the oil, and asked him for an answer about who the companies were, he could not provide any details on that. And it seems to me if you own a business, you would know who you call to do different things. And if you particularly were going to fix the item yourself, you would be able to state that. And obviously you'd be able to fix a window, seems to me, in more than a couple of days. And before you put bars back up on a window, I would think you would call a board up company to board a window up like everyone else in the city does when there's a fire or a catastrophic failure. So what my take is the attorney was doing a dance around all the apparent things that were brought up and tried to kind of brush over and respond. The other thing is he provided meeting notes and minutes from the meeting that the police officers stated that they had, and it clearly says in there security. So he knew, they knew, that the police had asked them to do something along the lines with security to prevent this loitering and prevent this gathering of people. And what we heard from the attorney is if you hire different individuals, it will cost X amount of dollars, which is not in line with, the business plan of this business. So I think there were a lot of inconsistencies in the testimony from the conditional use permit holder. And I feel that this is probably what they've been doing with the neighborhood for 2 years, as Director of Public Utilities states, in order to deflect this or extend this or string it along. So is there any other comments or questions from the board? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion, please.
I move to revoke the permit.
Second.
Okay. I have a motion to revoke the conditional use permit and a second. Is there any further discussion on that? Seeing none, can you call the roll, please?
Director Scobie.
Aye.
Director Wilson.
Aye.
Director Hayes.
Aye.
Director Augustin.
Aye.
Director Eccles.
Aye.
Director Edwards is excused, and President Bradley.
Aye, revoked. I'd ask you to turn your attention to our meeting minutes from last Tuesday, August 27th, 2019. Are there any questions or comments on the minutes as presented? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion, please.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved to second for approval of last week's minutes. Can you call the roll, please?
Director Scobie.
Aye.
Director Wilson.
Aye.
Director Hayes.
Aye.
Director Augustin.
Aye.
Director Eccles.
Aye.
Director Edwards is excused and President Bradley.
Aye, the minutes are approved. Today's agenda, questions or comments on the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Moved to second for approval of today's agenda. Can you call the roll, please?
Director Scobie.
Aye.
Director Wilson.
Aye.
Director Hayes.
Aye.
Director Augustin.
Aye.
Director Eccles.
Aye.
Director Edwards is excused and President Bradley.
Aye, today's agenda is approved. Motion for adjournment, please.
So move.
Second. Hey,
Aye.
Summer.
Okay. Motion seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all.